Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
At Villere's Florist, we deliver the magic of flowers 7 days a week to the North Shore and South Shore in the New Orleans area. Whether it's for birthday parties, baby celebrations, Villere's provides colorful floral displays for all. With a store full of fresh-cut flowers, exotic tropical flowers, orchids, roses, and even fruit baskets, our goal is to make your vision a reality. Villere's Florist, proudly serving Louisiana since 1969.
Homeowners insurance increasing or deductible too high? Call, click, or come in. Save a Dave. Dave Miette Insurance Agency.
For over 48 years, Southern Tires and Auto Repair has provided services across the New Orleans metro area. Southern Tires offers a range of tires for all vehicles and ATVs. We also have a full suite of auto repair options, including brake repair, rim repair, custom exhaust, steering and suspension, tire siping, and so much more. Southern Tires and Auto Repair, 2550 Hickory Avenue in Metairie.
Cnc Drugs is a family-owned pharmacy that's been serving Southeast Louisiana for over 50 years. Whether you need help taking care of an elderly family member, a growing child, or even a pet, Cnc provides patient-centered care for your entire family. Cnc Drugs, large enough to serve you, small enough to know you. Locations in Mandeville and Araby.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Inside New Orleans. I'm your host, Eric Asher, live from our Pontchartrain Production Studios on a beautiful day here in New Orleans. And don't let the deceive you with the beautiful sunshine. It feels like spring here in New Orleans. So again, looking forward to a great show. Remember, we're live streaming on the WLAE-TV YouTube page now as well. So again, make sure you're checking us out either on WLAE-TV or, of course, on our YouTube page. Ken Trahan of CrescentCitySports.com is our guest. We'll cover all the home teams today. Saints, LSU, Tulane, Pelicans, you name it, we'll cover it. And Ken, welcome to the show. CrescentCitySports.com, Nashville, FM 106.1, All Access. The three tailgaters. Whew, we got I can keep on going and going and going, but welcome back and thank you for being here today. I certainly appreciate it.
It's nice to be here. Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Ken, before we get started, you got so much stuff going on between the Saints Hall of Fame, CrescentCitySports.com, the radio show, both radio shows. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on, what's on the docket?
Well, all those things are 24/7.
Right.
CrescentCitySports.com is a 24/7 venture and one that we enjoy thoroughly, and obviously very happy with what we've been able to accomplish in 14 years. Radio, of course, with you on 106.1 FM following your show. Great lead-in, and enjoy that on a nightly basis as well, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday mornings with our Three Tailgaters show. And the Saints Hall of Fame, we just had our 29th annual Saints Hall of Fame Celebrity Golf Classic, which was about a week and a half ago. A huge success. Thanks to all. Dennis Allen was great, as was Mickey Loomis, and all the current players and the former players and all the restaurants, all the participants. It's a major undertaking. I'm breathing a sigh of relief, frankly, just in time for our Saints Hall of Fame Biloxi celebration coming up on June 9th and 10th with a reception and auction. And then, of course, our golf tournament at Grand Bear Golf Course, the Jack Nicklaus course, and our night at the Biloxi Shuckers baseball game where we introduce all of our guys on field. And I have them sign autographs during the course of the game. So not too many people are watching the game. They're busy chasing our guys
Saints,
down.
yeah.
So, but it's good. So, and it's a wonderful thing we started 6 years ago. Mayor Fofo Gillich in Biloxi has been a blessing to us. And so that's a lot of what's happening right now. And we also at CrescentCitySports.com are about to embark on sponsoring a big baseball summer league for high school baseball here soon.
And would you expound that a bit, the summer league?
Yeah, we were approached by some coaches about a summer league, and long story short, it's kind of like the old Metro League in the sense that there's no seniors. It's a development league.
Right.
So all the schools play their underclassmen, and they use it for development. And things have evolved so much. American Legion is a wonderful entity, one that I love and cherish, but it's evolved to the point where most people don't participate anymore because it's a summer-long commitment. If you play it all the way through, you're not going to be done until the end of July, early August.
Right.
And if you win state and move on to the regional and so forth, you could be playing in mid-August. And so there's a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to use the summer for development. Well, I was contacted by local coaches about doing a summer league, and would they mind if they used our name, because everybody goes to our website and they love and respect it. And we said, sure. And then we got to the point of where we'll do a game of the week starting next Tuesday night. 16 prominent area schools, private and public.
Okay.
And we'll have a release out on it that people can see at CrescentCitySports.com. It'll have all the teams in it and tell you what's happening with the schedules and so forth. So anything we can do to promote high school sports, we're going to do. And where Legion's concerned, we're trying to get involved and maybe doing a game or two there also to help promote that product.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great also for the kids this summer to have an opportunity to be able to, again, to be able to play. And look, I know, traditionally, New Orleans, again, with high school baseball, again, the off season, you get a lot of really good teams and a lot of really good players. And you said it, that's where the kids are developing as well.
Yes, and yes, Usfl is in the league.
There you go.
There you go.
Beautiful.
Want to make sure we got that.
There you go. Let's get started. Saints OTAs. I've talked about on the radio show over the last couple of weeks that, I thought that not having OTAs last year really hurt this team. And I thought that, again, especially when you talk about 58 different starters, 4 different quarterbacks, I don't know if their bodies were ready for the upcoming season. But this is a little bit different than maybe what we saw last year. Yes, you want those guys there. You want them getting in shape, hardening their body, working under the staff at the Saints. But you've got a new coaching. You've got a new head coach, and he's got to do things his way. You're in a situation where, again, yes, you now don't have Breeze or Peyton anymore, where this is kind of a new regime, like a total new regime in that standpoint. Even though, again, you have continuity. You've kept your coaches. You've tried to keep your team together. I think that these OTAs are as big as the OTAs that maybe we saw back in 2006 when Sean Payton took over, because of, again, this is a team that I think is still, that I think can be one of the best teams in the NFC, but also has a very, very tough schedule with 13 straight games in which before you get a bye. Your thoughts on OTAs, and then your thoughts on what these OTAs mean. Is it anything different? Am I off base on what I'm talking about? Where I think this is really this is where you really are going to make the future of this team this season in these OTAs and these off-season workouts.
No, I think you're right on target. I think from the standpoint of all of the things you mentioned makes this important to be able to congregate as much as you possibly can. Familiarity, understanding, and even though you have some continuity with coaching and with players, there are changes and there are different people involved. And Jameis Winston was a starter for 7 games last year, so there's really that familiarity and that meshing that needs to take place too. So, and Dennis Allen obviously will put his stamp on things, and they do have some new coaches, so I think it's very important to get as much working out together as you possibly can. Pandemic issues are pretty much over with, knock on wood, and therefore you can gather and do the things that you need to do as much as you possibly can. And the good news is their participation is all there. That's not the case with every team.
True.
You have some guys that are unhappy about contracts and such, so that's good. Jameis Winston's on the field, that's great. Michael Thomas is there, that's great. And of course, the rookies are hungry and they're there. I had a chance to speak to the rookies earlier this week. Every year we do a rookie indoctrination with the history of the franchise, and they have me do that for them. And I think it's a really good group of guys. I think one of the things you notice immediately about the players that they brought in is they're pretty smart. They're very observant, they're smart, introspective. A couple look like professors, frankly. But I think character matters significantly with this team and with this franchise. I think that's been a focus now for the last 6 or 7 years. And I think they've got another group like that. I don't see any issues here at all, and it wouldn't shock me if 4 or all 5 of the draft picks make the team.
Now, most of these guys, if not all, were team captains, right? So they went with leaders, they went with character, and then of course they went with, again, what they felt was the best fit for the team, regardless of position. But again, just in your time spending with them, you think it's going to be a really good group?
I do, and also special teams, because
that's
clearly the linebacker and the defensive back will be special teams players who will make the team for that reason only. And Taylor, of course, could have a chance to be the 4th corner on this team. And then at linebacker, you talk about a guy that could be the fourth linebacker if everything works out.
Right.
I think the guy that clearly is on the clock is Zach Bond as to whether he'll be here
I agree.
or not. I think Caden Ellis is a strong side guy, so he probably makes it, but we all know Demario Davis and Pete Werner will be the two starters.
Right.
So I think there's room there too.
Do you think that the Saints will try to re-sign Quan, or do you think that is passed?
I don't know. I mean, the longer it goes, there's two ways to look at it. That's either good or bad for him. The longer it goes, the cheaper he becomes.
Yes.
Number one, but the longer it goes, the more they move on.
Right.
Because they've got guys, including a draft pick, and including Ellis and Bond and Warner, young guys.
Yes.
So I'd love to see him back. He's a great story. He's still a good player.
Yes, he is.
And he came back and played well despite a terrible injury the year before, a year ago. So I'd love to see him back. I don't know that that's going to happen. If I had to put odds on it, I'd say probably not at this stage, but I wouldn't rule it out.
Right. Going out and signing two players that have some ties back to Louisiana, ties back to New Orleans, ties to LSU. But besides that, the players themselves, the leadership that they bring to the table, again, what they've done in their careers, veteran players who have a presence in a locker room. Talk about the signing of Tyrod Matthew and Jarvis Landry and what you think it may mean for this franchise.
A couple of different ways to look at it. With Matthew, he brings championship experience and pedigree to the team, having been with the Chiefs most recently, and there's nothing wrong with that. And with Landry, I think he's on the other side of it. I think he's a motivated guy that wants to be on that type of team. So I think you get his maximum ability at this stage of his career. What is that? Well, I think here, when you're talking about the relative numbers, don't look at the numbers of 3 and 4 years ago. They're not going to throw the ball that anywhere near at that volume when Drew Brees was Drew Brees and phenomenal, and Michael Thomas was catching 140-plus footballs. So what's a really good year for Landry? I think if he catches 60 passes and puts the ball in the end zone 5 times, you've gotten everything you could want and then some, not unlike what Sanders gave them a couple of years ago. And in the case of Michael Thomas, I'm sure you'll get to, is he going to be the guy we saw in 2019, the guy we saw in 2020, or somewhere in between the two? My guess is somewhere in between the two. I mean, you haven't been on the field basically in 2 years by the time you go out there. So I don't know that you can expect to flip the switch and be that guy. And the other part of that is, as I said before, they're not going to throw the ball as much, at least not from where I sit. And as a result, he's not going to catch 140 balls. But if he goes out and catches 80 to 100 and puts the ball in the end zone 7 or 8 times, you've gotten everything you want out of that position, because you now have Olave, who clearly is a speed guy and can help you in stretching a defense, and you still have Callaway, who's a nice young player.
Yes.
And they re-signed Traquan Smith. So they have a ton of options on the outside. I'm not sure about the tight end spot. Taysom Hill could play a big role there. And at running back, that's another story because of Kamara being so good catching the ball out of the backfield. But how long is he going to be out? We all expect that he will be, although you never really know until you know. Nobody's talking about Marcus May. He's going to be out to start the season based on a DUI, it appears. And look, that's why it's important to have Matthew and some of the others that you have. So, look, I think their roster, if everybody is there, is a better roster overall than it was last year. I mean, Armstead, Malcolm Jenkins, Marcus Williams, those are guys to replace. Left tackle is a question mark. James Hurst is going to be given every chance to win that job. You know, and obviously the draft pick, they drafted him there for a reason. And he's going to be given a chance too. But they like Hurst, so stay tuned. And then, as I mentioned in the secondary, when you're talking about the fact that they brought Roby back very quietly and at a lesser price, which was pretty special. And Adebo's a second-year player, and they drafted Taylor. And then you got just a great hybrid guy in C.J. Gardner-Johnson. And you brought back P.J. Williams. And, of course, you got Matthew. I think you covered yourself. May's the glue. I mean, if he's going to be that other guy back there, you know, Matthew's more of a roamer than he is anything else. I think personnel-wise, they're better. They're stacked up front. They have so many good pass rushers. And, you know, an offense, I think they're obviously much better at wide receiver. They'll be better at quarterback because they're healthy. And then running back depends on Kamara, and they didn't really bring anybody else in.
Do you think that's something they have to do, though?
Well, I think they looked at it. They looked at Sonny Michel. They looked at Darrell Williams and didn't get either one, whether it was money or not. And obviously Abram's a guy that figures, I think, in their plans. I think they like him, and I think they're going to give him a chance to make this roster. Well, I love what he did in college.
Yeah.
And when I've talked about him, I've equated him not so much in stature, but in terms of productivity and style to Pierre Thomas, an undrafted free agent who came here and beat out a draft pick in Pittman, who was a 4th-round pick. And the reason I say that is because Thomas wasn't fast, but he was fast enough. Thomas wasn't a great pass catcher, but he was good enough. And Thomas wasn't big, but he was big enough. And I think I'd say the same exact things about this guy. If you watch him play, he's fast enough. He's big enough. He catches the ball well enough. And he'll be a willing blocker if necessary, like Thomas. You've got to be able to trust that guy in blitz pickup. So, yes, I think, and with running backs, experience teaches us that you don't need to make a sizable investment to get a return on investment. So I think they feel like they've got a diamond in the rough there. And based on what I saw in college, I can't not disagree.
Let's talk about Trevor Penning for a moment, because obviously, he was a mauler in college. He's a guy that, again, is going to be really great when you're in the run game. Again, I see him, if he doesn't start, as maybe that 3rd tackle, that tackle eligible. He's a huge guy. How quickly do you think he can get up to speed in terms of dealing with NFL pass rushers? That's going to be the key for him.
Well, I mean, obviously only time will tell where that's concerned. I think the comfort level that the Saints have in that is Teron Armstead. Because let's not forget, when Armstead arrived here, he came from a small college.
Yes.
And the questions about him were exactly the same. Now, different player. He's an athlete and a guy that could run like unbelievably for his size. Different type of player, but same position. And he didn't start initially. Charles Brown started, and he replaced him about 10 or 11 games in and never gave up the job. I can see something like that happening, and I'm not devaluing Hurst at all or even Landon Young. I think they have hopes for these guys, and look, if Hurst gets the job and plays very well, that's a pleasant problem to have.
Yes.
But you made a 1st-round investment in Penning, so clearly he's going to be a starter at some point. If he isn't, then they've missed badly.
Talk about Cesar Ruiz.
Well, I mean, I think they're thinking that Doug Marrone is going to help change the dynamic of what he can do. Hopefully that's the case. Look, they made a couple of changes. I hated seeing Curtis Johnson go. He's a personal friend of mine. And I thought he did a fantastic job here. But they've got a different voice at wide receiver. And they have a different voice at offensive line. And I think that was twofold with Curtis Johnson. Maybe a little bit to do with Michael Thomas, we'll see. And with the offensive line, I think a lot to do with Cesar Ruiz, to try to get the most out of him and to have a different voice. And a guy, Doug Marrone, is a proven commodity, a really good coach who's been a head coach in the league. And I think that Ruiz is his #1 project. That's the guy that he's got to get to perform up to the level they invested in him. Because that has not happened. And I think anybody would tell you that. We can look at Pro Football Focus grades, which I do all the time, but my naked eye can tell me things too. And talking to the people that do know more about this than I do, they say the same things. So I think it was all about Marrone coming in to try to get Ruiz to be the player they hope he can be. Let's not forget they get Andrus Peat back. On the other side, McCoy's a year older. Ramchek's going to be back, and he was out. Let's not forget he missed basically the last half of last season. So their offensive line, which looked like a strength going into last season, turned out to be a weakness. This year going in, it looks better, but a lot of that depends on what happens at left tackle and whether Ruiz progresses or not.
Well, one of the good things that came out of last year was, again, we saw Throckmorton being able to come in and play. And of course, with Pete and Ruiz struggling and Pete out, obviously he got an opportunity to play. They have a little bit more maybe quality depth there now than maybe we thought they did, because they had guys that had an opportunity to get on the field last year.
Well, Throckmorton is sitting there waiting for his opportunity, and he got in, was pressed into duty last year, and I think he's capable.
Me too.
And if they don't get what they want to get out of Ruiz, he's there. So I think they feel pretty good about that depth. I think they see promise in Landon Young. So I think they feel like they've got some quality depth there, which you need, because every year they have injuries up front. If they can stay healthy, then clearly they're going to be pretty good, in particular if their left tackle position performs well enough.
Talk about the quarterback room with, again, Dalton coming on, with, again, Jameis Winston, who's coming off the injury, but, again, did practice today for the media to be able to see. So he looks like he's a little bit ahead of schedule. And of course, Ian Book, who is also in that room, and maybe compare and contrast it to what they had last year in that room.
Well, I think it's a pretty good situation because Andy Dalton is the perfect backup at this stage of his career, and a guy will accept that role and fill it. So, not rock the boat, and you know that he's capable of stepping into a game and winning a game for you, and not losing a game. Everybody banged on Trevor Siemian last year, but as a reserve player, he was effective.
Yes.
As a starter, he wasn't. So, but again, what was the supporting cast? So you have to ask yourself those questions. But Dalton is extremely well equipped to handle that role. And they haven't given up on Ian Book. All of the stuff forget about him is ridiculous.
Right.
The guy got thrust into an impossible situation, which no one, and I mean no one, could have succeeded in. Thank God Drew Brees didn't take the cheese and come back for that game. It would have been a disaster. So, and Book's a very smart guy. I had him at our golf tournament. We had a chance to visit and really impressed with his character and his intelligence. So I think they still have hope for him too. So I think it's fine. And with regard to Winston, you can't help but pull for him after what he just went through with the injury and the fact that he'd really changed his life as a person and his approach. You know, look, your past is your past. All the things that went wrong, the things that he did wrong, and they were numerous, like many of us. He's past it. And he was a different guy. He was extremely well respected by his teammates, by his coaches, positive as can be, and was doing a solid job. You know, the questions persist on a nationwide basis, and that includes with the people that are most important, the people that set the lines and establish how good teams are going to be. They don't like the Saints. I mean, they've got them at 8 wins. And the reason they have them at 8 wins is twofold. Sean Payton and Jameis Winston. Sean Payton, they give that much credit to, understandably so. And Jameis Winston, they don't give that much credit to because of track record, and it's kind of the Missouri thing. Show me. Show me what you can do. You got a taste of it. You got a glimpse of it last year. And if it had been another 3 or 4 games, I think you'd have felt really good about it to see just how much he had progressed. But again, he was 4-2, and they won the 5th game he started when Siemian came in. So you can't argue with that. And I think he's capable of being a solid player. I don't think they're going to ask him to win games for him initially, but he has more weapons, so I do think they'll try a few more things. And let's not forget what he does best, which is throw the ball downfield. That's where he excels, more so than in the short passing game, where he's not the most accurate guy, and his numbers would tell you that. So I think you have to play to a player's strengths also.
When you talk about Vegas, and you talk about, again, the 8 wins, and of course they bumped that up just a little bit after the signing of Matthew and Landry. The loss of Sean Payton, I think that the club has done everything to mitigate the loss of Payton by bringing in a Marone. You've got some guys that, again, have had some head coaching experience on that coaching staff. Dennis Allen is going to be a man on his own when you look at what he's going to do going in the future. But we don't know. we saw Oakland. We don't know. How big of a loss is that going into this season? And even though the club did everything they could to be able to surround him with really good coaches, at the end of the day, he's the guy that's got to make the decision. He sets the tone for the team. What do you anticipate?
Well, I think, look, Coach Payton didn't make all the right decisions. On game days. We'd sit up there sometimes and get downright flustered about some of the decisions, but he made a lot of right decisions, and the players fed off of him. He had such a confidence about himself and cockiness, if you will, and there was never a situation that he didn't think he could make. They went for it so often on 4th downs and so forth, but I think his team fed off of that, and that breeds confidence in players. I don't know how Dennis Allen is going to be, and look, Ed Daniels and I have talked about this consistently on our show. And that is that, until we see what happens on game day, you really don't know. Because you know the guy is a good coach. You know he's well prepared. You know he's got head coaching experience. You know he's extremely well respected by his players who wanted him to get that job. And Dennis, for those that don't know him, he's a very level, even-keeled guy. Totally the opposite of Coach Payton. in that regard. So it's going to be a different approach. And how it comes across on game day remains to be seen. Now, he's been calling the defensive signals all this time, and he's done a great job on the defensive side of the football. But now he's the game manager, and he has to make the tough calls. So how much will he lean on other coaches? I don't know. Ultimately, the buck stops here. It's his decision. So until we see that on game day, I'm not sure that any of us truly knows. But I do know he's very well prepared. He's a really good coach. He has the players' respect. And I think the fact that he's been around the block and had a chance to do this previously will help. And those that want to cast aspersions at him for that job where he lost his job, it was with a bad organization. Bad organization and a bad team. This is a good organization, and I think a pretty good team.
And I think they've given him the weapons that he needs to succeed. You know, they went out, realized again that wide receiver room was horrible. They upgraded it. I think they've upgraded its safety as well. So I think they've done what they need to do in the offseason and try to give him all the tools in the tool chest. But the lack of Sean Payton on that sidelines on game day and what he brought to the table, but also in that offensive room, again, getting that game plan together. Carmichael's been with him every step of the way. How much does that change in your mind?
Well, I got to believe that Coach Allen is going to defer to Pete Carmichael on most of these issues. He is a defensive coach, and he'll still run the defense. So I think, I'm just guessing, but I'm assuming that that's kind of the way it's going to work. I mean, he'll have veto power. Obviously, I can step in at a certain point in time, but I've always been of the mindset, and this is how I've lived my life professionally, to surround yourself with really good people and let them do their job and get out of their way. And whatever success I've achieved, I attribute to that philosophy and that approach, because good people make you look good. And that's a large part of whatever I've been able to achieve. And I feel the same way about team situations. You know, the iron fist thing, I understand that there are some guys like that. And Sean Payton's mentor was Bill Parcells. He unquestionably was that guy. Bill Belichick is unquestionably that guy, and those guys are incredibly successful. But then I can name you a bunch of others that have been incredibly successful head coaches that have been just the opposite, where they've deferred to the guys around them and let them do their thing to succeed. So, look, I just think that you have the final decision to make, ultimately. But hire the best guys, let them do their jobs, and to that point, I think he'll let Carmichael have pretty much free reign. When you look at this team and you match it up against the teams in the NFC, it's early, teams in the NFL as a whole, where are they? Well, I think the NFC is weaker than the AFC. I certainly think the Rams have the best personnel. They don't have Beckham right now, and if they do, he's not the same guy at this point. Injury-wise, we'll see. Even rumors about the Saints with that, but I'd rather doubt that at this stage. And then, of course, Whitworth retired, but they're still, personnel-wise, a load. And there's that. But there's also the obvious, which is it's very difficult to repeat in the NFL. The 49ers, who probably should have beaten them last year, look, they've got, in all likelihood, they're going to start a second-year quarterback. That doesn't engender a lot of confidence. And then their best player, Deebo Samuel, doesn't even want to play there. So we'll see how that works out. The Packers lost their best player on the field outside of their quarterback in the receiver room. And I don't care who they drafted, you got to replace that guy, and that's enormous to replace a player of that stature. So, to me, that's a problem. Tampa Bay lost 2 starting offensive linemen, Gronkowski and Antonio Brown. That's a lot right there. And, oh, by the way, Tom Brady's a year older, and I don't care how good you are or who you are. At some point, it catches up with you. So, I don't think they're going to be quite as good.
Neither do I.
But I do think they'll be good. And then, who else? Philadelphia is better. But do you think Jalen Hurts is a championship quarterback? The Vikings, if healthy, have real good receivers, real good, and they got a real good running back if they're healthy. Do you think Kirk Cousins is a championship quarterback? Some days he looks like that, and other days he disappears. I don't know. So then you look at the rest of the NFC. Arizona, their quarterback's unhappy and upset. Their wide receiver is not the same player, Hopkins, that he was previously, and injuries have set in. So not as confident from their perspective. And then from the Saints' perspective, there's also the division. Aside from Tampa Bay still being good but not as good, you've got 2 teams that, from my perspective, are still in a identification mode. If you want to call it rebuilding, you can. I think Carolina's just trying to identify themselves. I don't know who they are.
Right.
You know, they've gone through a lot of things. They tried to get 2 quarterbacks, didn't get them, so now they drafted Corral, but Darnold's their guy, and they're talking about trading McCaffrey, and they deep six Joe Brady, and he ends up in a better place in Buffalo.
Right.
And Matt Rule's on the clock. And then in Atlanta, I think Terry Fontenot's a good man, and he's got an idea, but they're going in with the quarterback situation they have. You know, they brought in Ritter, but they have Mariota.
Right.
And they're less a receiver, and I'm just not, I don't think they're that good. So as a result, it's conceivable, as I've said many times, that the Saints could be 5-1 in their division. And if they are, then all you have to do is go 5-6 or 6-5 to be a 10 or 11 win team. And I think that's extremely conceivable. I'm not a betting man, but if that thing is still at 8, I'd bet the over right now.
Right now.
So that's just my opinion. And I'm not a homer.
Right.
When I say that. Last year I picked the Saints to win 8 games, as you recall, and they won 9.
Right.
So it's always going to be a fair and honest evaluation. I just think that personnel-wise, they're better than a losing team.
Me too. Me too. Does that put them in the upper echelon of the NFC?
I think they're a top 5 team.
Yep.
Top 6 for sure.
Yeah.
And you got to be one of 7, right?
Right.
So I think they're 5 or 6.
Right.
In the grand scheme, I wouldn't put them ahead of Tampa Bay yet, but let's not forget how well they match up with Tampa Bay.
And look, their offensive line is much weaker than it was last year.
Very much so.
Okay, and that's one of the keys to keeping Brady upright as well. No doubt about it. I agree with you, by the way. I think they're in the upper echelon of the NFC as well. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We've got a lot to cover in our second block. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. Ken Trahan of CrescentCitySports.com and Nash FM 106.1 is with us. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Don't move.
Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration has been family-owned and operated since 1989. Burkhart has energy-efficient solutions and offers brands such as Mitsubishi ductless AC units and Amana, the only manufacturer with a lifetime unit replacement warranty. Burkhart's offers maintenance bundle packages that include servicing your AC, generator, and tankless water heater. For more information on the services Burkhart's provides, visit acpromise.com. Burkhart's Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration, providing comfort for life.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Ken Trahan of 106.1 FM Nash Icon and also CrescentCitySports.com is our guest. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Quickly, we'll touch on the USFL. Breakers are now 4-2. They beat the Maulers out of Pittsburgh 26-16. They got the Michigan Panthers up next. That's at 6 p.m. on Saturday. Your thoughts on the team thus far?
Well, they're a top 4 team in the league, so they look like a playoff team out of their division. And you know, they've run the ball pretty well of late. Last week, Jones rushed for over 100 yards. You know, they throw the ball okay, not as proficient as you want to be, but then again, the whole league is not all that good in that particular area. They're pretty good on defense. You know, Diggs has been real good. And look, their kicker's good, so that helps too. They get points when they need them. So, yeah, I've watched like, I think 4 of the 6 games. And Birmingham looks like the best team that beat them. You know, New Jersey's pretty good. So, yeah, I mean, they're top 4 for a reason right now. Looks like they'll be a playoff team in their first season. So that's great. Then again, we'll see what happens after this season is over.
What do you think happens?
I don't know. I mean, they're supposed to come here.
Right. Where do they play?
I would assume. I would think they'd play in Caesars Superdome. I mean, I don't know where else you can play. Tulane's a problem because you got to get approval for the next number of events that can be held there on an annual basis. Right. And then also with the time of year you're playing, it'd be awfully hot. So all of that is applicable. And I do think that they certainly will try to get something with Caesars Superdome. But you're going to have to work around dates because with the pandemic, again, you know, looking like it's somewhat past us, events have returned to Caesars Superdome, from all kinds of shows to concerts to of course, the other sports aspects that exist in that facility.
Plus, they're still getting ready for, again, with the renovations.
Well, the
for
renovation's
Super Bowl.
the other problem. That renovation's going to continue for a couple more years.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and they got pushed back some by the pandemic, which has delayed things, and that's why the Super Bowl got pushed back a year too, that they were going to host. So, yeah, there's a lot to consider there, but my guess is that will certainly be their first approach.
Yep. Let's talk Pels. First of all, your thoughts overall on the season. From where they came, from when they started to where it ended.
Well, it's encouraging, obviously, and I think they've got a roster that they can play with and be successful with. I don't think they're a championship contender just yet. Can they be with Zion Williamson and one more piece? Yes, if that one more piece is significant. First, you got to get Williamson back. Second, he's got to play to his capability.
Yes.
Then you have to have him fit with what you have, because now you've got essentially two bigs who occupy space, and you can't have them both down low with he and Valanciunas. So there's some things. I remember he was playing point forward quite a bit in the previous season, and while they might return some of that, they don't necessarily need it now with McCollum in the fold, and then having Alvarado to be able to perform off the bench in the capacity he plays at. So I like where they're at. I still think they need Williamson back full throttle, and they need another piece, probably a veteran, somebody that can shoot the basketball and defend. I mean, again, an older version of Trey Murphy, somebody that can do those things, but has the experience under his belt to be able to go out there and know every night you can get that 8 to 12 points and get that guy that's going to defend on the other end. But I like where they're at, love Willie Green, and I certainly think they have a good future. And look, on paper, I think they're a winning team going into next season.
So do I. 8th pick in the draft. Do they hold on to that? Do they trade that to get a veteran? Is this a situation for the first time maybe in the history of professional basketball here in New Orleans that, again, that you're not in a situation where it's a one-man team once again? And also, lottery pick in the past, you're saying, oh my gosh, you got to get. Now that guy doesn't have to come in and be an immediate impact for this team, or does he?
Well, it depends on who it is. Number one, do they keep the pick? If they do, it really does depend on who's on the board. I think they have an idea about the players they like, and those players could fall anywhere from 3 or 4 to 12 or 13. There's about 10 guys in that range. I think everybody thinks they know who the first 3 picks are going to be, all bigs. Then it becomes a wide open situation. And is it a guy that can come in and make shots for you and be solid on the other end? If that guy's there, well, then that's a guy you're going to pick, and you'll probably hold on to it. If you don't see that guy being there, then you certainly can package things. And I think that they'd like to try to address their current roster too, because they got 14 guys under contract. And you can't have that many guys under contract and expect that they're all going to be here. They're not. They can't be. Not to mention the ability for somebody else to break through. And let's not forget Kyra Lewis is still on the roster and didn't play most of last year. So if that's the case, the most reasonable moves that you could make would be to try to package a trade where you trade draft pick collateral and Devontae Graham and see what you can get in return from a veteran perspective. Might you have to give up something else? Possibly, but it's not going to be Murphy. We know it's not going to be Herb Jones. It's not going to be McCollum. It's not going to be Alvarado. It's not going to be Williamson unless he doesn't want to be here. It's not going to be Ingram. Valanciunas, you could talk about that. As good a year as he had, with the way the league is going now, with people playing 5 out and with the traditional centers diminishing by the day, maybe you look at that, but I'd still like the guy because of the things he can do. It's not just the ability to score the ball. Does he have trouble guarding on a perimeter? Sure. But he can score the ball and he can rebound. Double guy. And he makes good decisions, and he can pass the ball well. So I think he's an asset on your team. The other player to look at long term about the possibility of packaging is Jackson Hayes.
How do you feel about that?
What's his role? Well, I mean, I think that, again, I don't want to use the word tease. I don't think that's fair. But he's a little bit of a tease in the sense that he's such a good athlete. And you see the athleticism in the open floor. He's a gazelle. He can go baseline to baseline faster than any big man in the game. And he can jump as high as anybody. He developed a little bit of an offensive game last year, but I think as time went on, you saw the teams figured out how to play him and how to play the Pelicans. They just left him alone. And they weren't going to respect him at all, on the perimeter, which gave them the ability to clog the painted area and double down when possible. So that's why I think that looking at things, especially if Williamson is back, and with Herb Jones and with Valanciunas and with the emergence of Murphy and such, where are the minutes going to be for Jackson Hayes? So to me, I think Hayes and Graham would be the if they were going to move anybody, those would likely be the guys. And that's not a statement about their abilities at all. It's just a statement of what this roster looks like and where they're trying to get to.
A lot of talk that maybe the second-round picks will be traded or maybe stashing a player overseas, which again, San Antonio made a living on, which would not be a bad move for this team if ultimately they got it. Look, there are a lot of first-round picks and first-round swaps still in their treasure chests right now from the Lakers and the Bucks deals. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of picks to come here that they've got over the next few years for sure.
Sure, and I think that's all about packaging. It's not about one guy.
No.
And they've stashed people before like Lozada, so it's happened before, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happened again.
Let's shift gears to the passing of a New Orleans great this week, a friend of yours, a guy that really, kind of kept boxing alive here in New Orleans, and that's Les Panano. For those that don't know who he is, please again give a little background and then just your thoughts.
Well, most of all, he's my friend. Les is a terrific person, loved the sport, but I think what people forget is he started out as a policeman, and Les saw a way through the building across the street from us here to be able to take people's lives, which were lost, and try to make something positive out of it and give them a way out. Boxing provides a way out physically. You release your emotions, first and foremost, and rage, if you want to call it that. But more than that, some of these guys became pretty good fighters. Jerry Celestine became the obvious person to point to. He got a title shot, and he came out of Paris prison. So Les did a great job of trying to improve lives, first and foremost. He was a promoter, was a trainer, was a manager. He did everything there was to make the sport vibrant again. When I was a kid, I would go to Municipal Auditorium and see the likes of Percy Pugh and Jerry Pellegrini, and eventually Chuck Mintz and Tony Licata, to name a few. And then Les came along when that era was passing on, and he started cards at all kinds of places. In fact, I wrote a column for the Kenner Star about that. I mean, you name a place, he had a card at Tulane. He had cards at Lakefront Arena, cards at the Landmark Hotel in Metairie, Pontchartrain Center in Kenner, Gulf Coast, all over the place. Of course, Superdome with major fights as well. He did it everywhere, and at every one of his fights, and I went to a whole bunch of them as a member of the media covering them, you'd see the same faces because he had that core group of 500 to 600 that would come every time and support boxing and support whatever he did. And he was a great promoter. The press conferences were held at businesses all over the place. Some of them were funny because they were sponsors, and it wouldn't be a place where you'd expect to have a press conference, but you did. He went on to do all the things I mentioned in the sport, and of course he fostered the careers of some huge names. Melvin Paul was awesome. John Super D. Duplessis was a great fighter. I mentioned Jerry Celestine previously, Paul Whitaker, Dominic Carter. I could go on, and even Dupuis most recently when he was promoting a fight when he was passing away. And he's worked with Lou DiBella, worked with Bob Arum, worked with Don King, the biggest names in the business, which tells you something too. And more than that, and then last but not least, when the sport of boxing, by many people's accounts, would have been considered to be waning, if not even dying on some fronts, he was a smart man. On his cards, all of a sudden, MMA bouts appeared on his boxing cards, and female bouts appeared on his boxing cards. And I've always said this, and it's the same with you and I in the whole media business that we got involved in so stupidly years ago. If you don't evolve and if you don't adapt, you'll be passed over and it'll eat you up and you'll be gone. And if I held to the things I did 20 years ago, I'd have been long gone. But obviously, we had a vision with the website we have, and we got way ahead of the curve before anybody else did that, and combined audio, video, and print, and doing games, and it's paid off handsomely. Well, Les figured that out. He wasn't going to be a dinosaur doing the same old thing and counting on those same 400 to 500 people to show up, and he attracted some new people to it as a result. He was constantly evolving, changing, promoting, and championing the sport. But more than that, he did a lot of good for a lot of people in his lifetime. Just a special guy, really good family, and I hated seeing that. The last thing I'll say about it is I'm on the All-State Sugar Bowl selection committee, and I was pushing Les. They nominated him 6 or 7 years ago. And it's hard to get in to the Greater New Orleans Sports Hall of Fame because it encompasses high school, college, pro, every level, male, female, every sport imaginable. So it's not easy. Well, he got in last year. He was alive to be there. Gave a great speech. Some of the guys whose careers he started, some of those from Parish Prison were there. And he acknowledged them all, and they were like, right on, Les, and it was beautiful to see. The fact that he was here to be part of that was special. I'll never forget that.
It's a great man. Did a lot of good for a lot of people.
I love that guy, man.
No doubt about it. Shift gears to college baseball. LSU plays later on today, maybe. Okay, after all the weather up in Hoover. The big series against Vandy, obviously, again. Hopefully that'll catapult this team. They're the 4th seed in the SEC tournament. They'll take on Kentucky. Your thoughts about their opportunity to be able to host a regional, which is what everybody's looking for, and then of course maybe advancing in this tournament.
Well, to host a regional, I do think they're going to have to do something in Hoover, whether it's win 1 game or 2 games. I'm not sure which would suffice. I think a lot of that depends on what happens elsewhere. But I think they can't go 2 and barbecue there.
I agree.
I think they have to win a game, and I think 1 would be sufficient. But if they win 2, I see no way they can be denied of hosting. And it's hard for me to fathom that there's only 3 SEC teams scheduled to be hosted at 16. That to me doesn't make a whole lot of sense with the #1 rated conference, with the ACC literally right there with them. And they would be the 4th team. They are the 4th seed for a reason. So there's that. From the standpoint of where they can go, I've always been a big believer of pitching and defense, and they don't have it. Their pitching has gotten better recently. Their bullpen's been pretty good. And obviously, Ty Floyd stepped up and pitched better. Hilliard's been solid all year. Money kind of spit the bit. And a couple others have disappeared, but as mentioned, their bullpen's been pretty good. They've catching the ball better over the last month or so, which is important. But ultimately, if they want to win, it's going to have to be a Johnny Holstaff situation pitching-wise, and they're going to have to bash the baseball. They're going to have to score 6 runs or more a game to be able to advance. So I don't see them on paper as being a threat to win at all because of defense and pitching. But they're so talented, I wouldn't sell them short because of how good they are offensively.
Tulane 1-1 in the AAC tournament right now. Again, they've advanced after beating USF yesterday 9-6. The big question is, who will replace Travis Jewett as head coach? And do you have any insight into that?
I wrote a piece about it at CrescentCitySports.com, and I think Jake Gautreaux is the one name to look at first and foremost. He has a ringing endorsement from Rick Jones, who has been consulted, and I had Rick on the radio show earlier this week, and he has been talked to by Troy Dannon. So I think you start there. There's a whole coaching tree from Rick Jones that they can look at and should look at. They're not going to get some of them because one is the head coach at Texas A&M, Jim Schlossnagle. The other is the head coach at South Carolina and Mark Kingston. You're not going to get those guys.
No.
But there's others that are head coaches or assistant coaches elsewhere that are quite good. And then there's maybe a little bit of a wild card in Justin Hill at McNeese, who's, I think, in this thing.
Okay.
But I do think it's Gautreaux, and it's a matter of whether he wants to come or not. Jake, of course, was a great player here. He learned everything under Coach Jones, and then he recruited for Tulane. In fact, those 2 teams that went to the NCAA under David Pierce, the last 2 teams that went to the NCAA tournament were largely the works of Rick Jones and Jake Gautreaux in terms of who those players were that were recruited. So I think Jake's the guy if he wants the job. His wife is a former Tulane volleyball player. I mean, I could go on and on. So, but he's one of the highest paid assistants in college baseball at Mississippi State. So it's not a guarantee by any stretch, but I think he's the top name.
Right. Some say he would have to take a pay cut to Tulane. Do you believe that?
Don't know the answer. If that's true, then Tulane needs to step it up because, and I wrote that too, and that the bigger questions are about whether or not they want to be that program
Right.
or not, as we've talked about for 100 years now with the entire athletic program.
I agree.
Baseball was the one sport that they committed to and had success with, but has that commitment waned in recent years? I would say it has to a degree, and then again the scholarship money through legislative scholarships and such, which Rick Jones had, don't exist anymore. NCAA is at least looking at the scholarship limit, and for the life of me, I don't understand why college baseball is 11.7 scholarships. It puts a school like Tulane at an incredible disadvantage with its tuition, and people automatically point to Vanderbilt.
Yes.
Vanderbilt has an incredible endowment,
Right.
and they have some real breaks for financial aid to get baseball players in, which Tulane doesn't have. And that's not taking anything away from Vanderbilt. They've been extremely successful under Tim Corbin, but that's what Tulane could be. That's what Rick Jones had them on the cusp of being. Let's not forget, not only did they go to 2 College World Series, but they were the #1 team in the nation and the #1 national seed in 2005.
Right. Right, and a long way from that now. I'm hoping that Dannon looks at this, where maybe he was against going with, again, those that came from the Tulane family, but this is kind of a must this time around for him.
I think so, and I think the reason Gotro is the guy that you look at first is because he did just the opposite last time. He went outside of the family when he had, at that time, 2 very viable candidates in Andy Cannizzaro and Matt Reiser.
Right.
Cannizzaro was a rising star and a local guy who, by the way, would still make a very good addition to your staff if he and Gotro get along very well. They were teammates who played next to each other when they were at Tulane. Maybe a little bit of a falling out from the Mississippi State experience, but I think that's been patched up a bit, and Eddie's a really good coach.
Yes, he is.
And a good man. And then, of course, when you look at the other potential guys you can have on staff, there's a whole bunch of guys you could get that can recruit. So I think their chances of succeeding and in that conference are pretty good. Their chances of being a national power, not so good unless they change their financial approach to who they admit to the program.
Talk about UNO baseball and where they are right now.
Well, they hit. They can really swing the bats, just don't have enough pitching.
Right.
And that was never more evident than when they were in the driver's seat game in the Southland Conference, Hammond part of the conference tournament. When all they had to do was win 1 game, they couldn't close the deal and gave up like 25, 26 runs in the first game before losing in extra innings to Southeastern in the second. Gets back to what I said about LSU, pitching and defense. They can hit. UNO has good offensive baseball team, and they don't have quite enough pitching. And of course, the Southland wasn't very good this year. They were one of the very, very few teams, one of 2 teams that had a winning record in the whole league. So there's that also. They got to win over LSU this year. They got to win over Tulane. They're competitive. I think Blake Dean's done a solid job. But again, it's what are you recruiting to, and what's the ability to recruit to that. And by and large, their makeup of their team is external, not internal. They're not a team of local players.
Yes.
So, and you got to do what's best for your program. Obviously, financially, if you recruit locally, it's going to be better for you. But you got to find good enough players, number one, and number 2, they have to want to come to you.
Right.
And that second part is a big part of it.
Yep. Talk about Dean's maturation as a head coach.
Well, I think he got hired young. I think he's done a really fine job.
Me too.
I think he's gotten to the point where he's clearly a master of the situations that he surveys. He understands the dynamic. He understands what it takes to win. He understands the league he's in. And it becomes a matter of, can he have enough to take that next step? Because we've seen this in coaching so many times. When guys take these lower mid-level or mid-level jobs that we sometimes refer to, and they initially have a little bit of success, then they stay too long, their star fades.
Yeah.
And then their career fades. So I hope that doesn't happen to him, because I think he's a good coach and a good guy.
Right. The Southland Championship Series, SLU, McNeese, who do you like?
McNeese, they're at home. They swept Southeastern during the year. So I think you got to go that route. Plus, they've been to the NCAA, twice in the last 3 years.
You called Delgado games this year. Talk about Joe Sherman's program.
Well, they did a great job. I mean, they lost the final game of the South Central District Regional to go to the World Series to a team that I think will win it all. This Crowder team is incredible. They have 5 guys throwing 90+, 1 guy throwing 100 that's committed to LSU. I doubt that he'll ever see campus because you don't find a 6'7" guy throwing 100 that has a wicked breaking ball too, who's not playing pro ball. So they were really good. Delgado beat them to get to a final game. And the fact that they beat them once was an incredible accomplishment based on the comparable talent levels. Delgado has one guy committed to the next level, Ethan Leger, to Ole Miss. The other team had 7 guys. So Joe does a great job annually. I mean, to have won, 13 or 14 Region 23 titles now is remarkable. And they've been to 4 College World Series, and the program has been to 5, including one with his dad. Just a tremendous coach. Look, the big story there is about what's about to happen there. Is the finally going to break ground and get this fantastic facility built, clubhouse, locker room, which will take them to another level in recruiting. And that's, of course, being financed by Gail Benson and the Saints.
Yeah, that's great. That's great news. Final question. LSU quarterback situation. How do you see this?
Based on comments and just what people have told me, I got to believe Miles Brennan is the favorite. I think that it's still not decided. The dilemma that Coach Kelly has is he going to lose 1 or 2 of these guys? You're not going to keep all 4.
No.
There's no way, because these guys are talented enough to play. And the young man Daniels coming in from Arizona State, he can run. It's obvious when you watch the video from the scrimmage. He can run. I don't know that he's a good enough passer to be your guy on a regular basis, but can he be a step-in guy and change things around? Yes. I kind of see it that way. And Nussmeier's probably the odd man out, but he's talented and he's improved. So can you convince Nussmeier to stay? I think your chances of convincing Howard to stay right now might be a little better because he's an incoming freshman. And Nussmeier got on the field last year. And physically, he's good enough to play.
He looks like it, yeah.
And full disclosure, I know his dad and I know his mom really well. Her and my wife are friends, so I do have some skin in the game of sorts there, but I'm very fair with my analysis. Of
course.
If I'm LSU right now, I'm probably thinking Miles Brennan with Daniels as the change of pace guy. And if anything goes wrong, Nussmeier's there and ready, and he'd be more of the every down guy, I think, if anything happened to Miles Brennan.
Be interested to see again what happens. It looks like, again, Howard's going to red shirt, right? So
you would think.
And Nussmeier really came on. I mean, and he really surprised me. Again, when I watched that spring game, I walked away impressed.
Yeah, he was good. He made one throw. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Physically, he's all there.
Yes.
I mean, he's got the arm talent. Maybe the best arm talent. Not maybe. I think he does have the best arm talent of the bunch. But you love a college quarterback that has mobility. Brennan doesn't really have that.
No.
Daniels does.
Right.
And then you love a guy that can make all the throws because then they have to guard every quadrant of the field and don't have to squeeze inside the hash marks and such. So I just think that from the standpoint of what's going to happen, it's going to be fun to watch to see how it unveils itself. But there's a reason that Coach Kelly encouraged Brennan to come back, and there's a reason he made all the incredibly positive comments he made about him.
Yes.
I don't think that's a smokescreen.
No, I don't either. But again, I think it will be. Nussmeier will get every opportunity to get the starting job. I think it will be wide open. But I do agree.
I think he has a shot and he has a future. So I hope it's here.
Hope it's here, no doubt. Ken, thanks for joining us today. Certainly appreciate it as always.
Pleasure.
You and your family have a happy Memorial Day
Plan on it, buddy. Thank you.
There you go. All right, thanks so much for tuning in. Again, happy Memorial Day to each and every one of our viewers. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Remember, there are plenty of ways to be able to catch our program. There's a QR code that's up on your screen right now that'll take you to WLAE-TV YouTube page or to my website. And of course, again, you can also check out all the different ways you can catch our program. That's up for you as well. Don't forget, you can catch me on the radio, 106.1 FM, Nash Icon, 4 to 6. Of course, Ken Trahan's, his show is 6 to 7, following my show. And of course, don't forget about the 3 Tailgaters, 10 to noon, each and every Saturday on 106.1 FM. Also, again, want to thank our underwriters that make the show possible. Please continue to support our underwriters. We thank them. And of course, the WLE production staff, which does a great job producing our program each and every week. Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Logan Rafia, Alex Chacon, and my director, William Hill. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. We'll be back next week with another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks to Ken Trahan. I'm Eric Asher. See you next week.